Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is Nabanita Adhikari, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring to you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India to celebrate Constitution Day on Saturday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch various initiatives under the E-Court project. Indo-Pacific region is important for global economic growth, says Defence Minister of India, Rajnath Singh. G20 delegation arrives in Port Blair for interactive briefing for heads of missions of member countries in India. In China, a massive labour protest reported at Foxconn's Changzhou factory against zero COVID policy. In cricket, New Zealand defeat India by 7 wickets in the first one-day international at Auckland. And in the FIFA World Cup football, host Qatar eliminated from the tournament after losing to Senegal 1-3 in a Group A match. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will participate in the Constitution Day celebrations in the Supreme Court on Saturday. During the program, the Prime Minister will launch various new initiatives under the E-Court project. The project is an effort to provide services to litigants, lawyers and the judiciary through information and communication technology. The initiatives being launched by the Prime Minister include Virtual Justice Clock, Justice Mobile App 2.0, Digital Court and S3WAS websites. Virtual Justice Clock will make the functioning of the courts accountable and transparent by sharing with the public the status of case disposals by the court. Public can access the Virtual Justice Clock of any court on the District Court's website. Through Justice Mobile App 2.0, judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court can now monitor the case pendency and its disposal. Digital Court is an initiative to make the court records available to the judge in digitized form. S3WAS websites is a framework to generate, configure, deploy and manage websites for publishing specified information and services related to district judiciary.
Moving on to our segment G20 in India, the Indian city of Lakes, Udaipur in Rajasthan is gearing up to host the first G20 Sherpa meeting in India from 4th to 7th of December. A report.
The meeting is aimed at fostering growth and building bond among the 20 nations. Among the highlights will be the depiction of Indian culture with wall paintings and illumination of heritage sites across the city. The G20 Sherpa meeting is expected to be held at the Darbar Hall at the City Palace, Udaipur. Arrangement is being made at the Fateh Prakash Palace, Hotel Uday Vilas and Leela Palace to accommodate the delegates for the meeting. The royal dinner is expected to be held at Jag Mandir, where the delegates will be treated to delicacies from the Indian cuisine as well as those of the member countries. In an exclusive interview to AIR News, Udaipur Collector Tara Chand Meena outlined the arrangements made in the city for the G20 Sherpa meeting to be held next month.
राज्य सरकार के निर्देश हैं कि इसको बहुत ही अच्छी तरीके से आयोजित करवाया जाए। उसी क्रम में हम पूरे शहर की जो सड़कें हैं उनको बहुत ही दुरुस्त कर दिया। यहाँ मुख्यतः लीला, लेक प्लेस और ताज फतेह प्रकाश में कार्यक्रम है इनके, और इसके बाद में रणकपुर और कंबलगढ़ की भी विजिट है। तो आगंतुकों को किसी तरह की असुविधा नहीं हो और हमारा देश के लिए अच्छा मैसेज रहे दूसरे देशों के लोगों के बीच में, उसके लिए सारी व्यवस्था हमने कर रखी है और पर्याप्त सिक्योरिटी की भी व्यवस्था हमने कर रखी है।
The Sherpa meeting of the G20 summit is a preliminary meeting of the government representatives before the main G20 summit. Here, the representatives of the member nations hold discussions to firm up possible agreements. The final decisions are taken at the G20 summit by the heads of the states. Ahead of the main G20 summit, the Sherpas meeting ensures that the time and resources required at the time of negotiations of the larger heads of the state at the final summit are minimized. The former CEO of Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, is the G20 Sherpa from India. Swati Rukheja, World News.
Meanwhile, the G20 delegation has arrived in Port Blair for interactive briefing for the heads of missions of G20 countries in India. The G20 delegation received a warm welcome in Port Blair on Friday. Soon after their arrival, the delegation visited the National Memorial Cellular Jail. Former Foreign Secretary and G20 Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan Shringla and G20 Sherpa Amit Kant are part of the delegation. It is a moment of immense pride for the entire nation as the journey of G20 India presidency begins at Cellular Jail in Port Blair. In a tweet, Mr. Kant remarked that we commemorate the valor and service of all our unsung freedom fighters who were imprisoned in this cellular jail and salute their invaluable contribution towards India. The briefing of G20 will be held on Saturday at Swaraj Dweep. India will take over the G20 presidency on the 1st of December this year.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has called upon the nations to work together to tackle the challenges posed by the climate change, COVID pandemic and widespread deprivation. He said all the nations should take collective steps to surmount these challenges without being distracted by the destructive seduction of wars and conflicts. Addressing the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue 2022 in New Delhi on Friday, Mr. Singh said the resolute message of Prime Minister Narendra Modi that the era of war is over and has been echoed by the world leaders gathered in G20 summit in Bali.
Dialogue and discussions should be seen as the only civilized mechanism for resolving disputes and disagreements and for creating any regional or global order in our times. The resolute message of our Prime Minister that the era of war is over has been echoed by the world leaders gathered in Bali recently for the G20 summit, with the G20 communique mentioning that now is not the time for war.
Mr. Singh stressed on elevating the paradigm of collective security to a level of shared interests and shared security. He expressed belief that if security becomes a truly collective enterprise, then a beneficial global order can be created. The Defence Minister said the Indo-Pacific region remains important for the economic development of the global community.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring to you a discussion on the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue 2022 as India prepares to tackle threats in the maritime domain. In conversation are Anil Kumar Trigunyat, a former ambassador, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, a journalist.
With China's increasing assertiveness on maritime issues, India has reiterated its stand on a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific order in accordance with international law. Speaking at the 9th ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting in Cambodia on Wednesday, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh affirmed India's position, stating that India advocates a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region and calls for peaceful dialogue and resolution of disputes while respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations. He also said that India stands for the freedom of navigation and overflight, unimpeded lawful commerce, peaceful settlement of maritime disputes, and adherence to international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas 1982. He said, adding that a peaceful Indo-Pacific with ASEAN as its center becomes vital more than ever for the security and the prosperity of the world. The Defence Minister's comments came on a day when a 3-day apex-level regional strategic dialogue of the Indian Navy, the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue 2022, began in New Delhi. The Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue is an annual international conference that seeks to foster exchange of ideas and promote deliberations on maritime issues relevant to the Indo-Pacific, which for India stretches over a vast, predominantly maritime expanse from the eastern shore of Africa to the western shore of the Americas. Ambassador Anil Trigunyat, why is it important for the Raksha Mantri to reaffirm India's position on the Indo-Pacific region at this stage? Why is this reiteration so crucial?
You see, the problem is that Indo-Pacific region has emerged as a major theater of superpower competition. And we know that the Sino-US contestation, whether it is geopolitical or geoeconomic or geostrategic, is veering into the Indo-Pacific domain, in which Indian Ocean, we are a resident power, we are the major power, and the Pacific Ocean, which, as you know, that Prime Minister Abe of Japan, former Prime Minister, had mentioned that about the confluence of the two seas, and since then this has really taken off. Now, the
Indeed.
Indo-Pacific is, of course, critical because of the various choke points as well as the various trading routes, which are extremely critical for the well-being of India and the other littoral states in the region, apart from its natural wealth and whatever there. Then we have seen also that increasing hegemonistic approaches of China in the Indo-Pacific, especially whether it is the violation of or non-adherence to the International Court of Justice Act decision against China for Philippines, or for that matter, displaying its force and breaching the sovereignty of various countries, including Japan, Taiwan, and other ASEAN countries, or the problem that we are having with China on the border. So I think that China, in this sense, becomes a singular force which has been trying to change the dynamic of the region. And India, being a major power, has to work together so that the international order and the free and open Indo-Pacific, as well as the freedom of navigation, continues to be there. Now, there is a difference between India's approach and that of the other major powers. India's approach has been, as was enshrined by Prime Minister Modi when he spoke in 2017 in Singapore at the Shangri-La Dialogue. He had very clearly said that it is inclusive, means it is not for containment of China or for that matter against China in that sense. But he urged it. And then later on, we have seen that even the Maritime Conference, which was held last year under our presidency, in that also Prime Minister Modi very clearly articulated and conferred that freedom of navigation, respect for the rights, respect of international conventions like the UNCLOS are extremely important issues if there has been a peaceful Indo-Pacific. Now, we are seeing the threats to that peace, and therefore it is important and imperative that we have the meetings of these defense ministers from the ASEAN in Cambodia, where Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh Ji is attending. He obviously stated India's position very clearly, and that there has to be centrality of ASEAN, whatever happens in the Indo-Pacific, and that India stands by this rule-based maritime order.
Now, ASEAN is, of course, one of India's most major strategic, economic, geostrategic partners, certainly. But this whole region has also come under increasing, as you correctly said, destabilizing kinds of actions from our immediate neighbor, China. And that being the case, it is also a very important part of why we are part of the quadrilateral of four democracies, which flank this Indo-Pacific region, as it were, Australia, the United States, Japan, and India. Now, even at the Quad Summit in May this year, the heads of state had to say that they wanted investment in this infrastructure, in this Indo-Pacific region, and all of this ties in with the Prime Minister's Sagar approach, which is security and growth for all in the region. Since Mr. Xi Jinping has taken over for the third time, has entered his third term, there seems to be a little more aggressive intent in what China says, making this perhaps a little more important for other countries to try and articulate their stance. Would that be a correct understanding?
Yeah, you are quite right. But as you know that in the Quad, if we talk about it, the Quad has really begun to take shape only very recently. It was supposed to be a security dialogue, but it just last 3-4 years that we have seen that action has been taken, and there have been physical meetings and the virtual meetings, and the spirit of Quad along with the action plan, etc., have been issued, and which clearly focus on a couple of things. The security dimension of it, I would say, is on the other side, where we have these Malabar exercises among all the four countries. But the intent that has been displayed coming from the United States is obviously clearly targeted at China. India's, in a different way, is to take China on board so that it follows to the extent possible, to impress upon the Chinese through dialogue mechanisms rather than taking the confrontational route. So that's the difference between them. And that's the reason that they realized that disruption of the global and value supply chains, in which China was the major driving force for the rest of the world, it dawned upon nearly everyone that during the pandemic, by willfully or otherwise, there can be a disruption in value supply chains, which was further accentuated by the Russia-Ukraine war. So India, in that sense, could be an alternate for this. So whether it is the critical technologies, whether it is the rare earths, or whether it is the vaccine manufacturing or other pandemic or healthcare related dimensions. I think that that's where there is a much greater possibility of India emerging as a very reliable and trusted partner for the West, being a largest democracy in the world. So that is very true. And now, what is China's game essentially, in my view, is very simple. They know that India is the only country in the region and outside which has the potential to really confront them if needed in any which way, even though they are going to be a big superpower and all that, but India has stood. And we have seen that in the post-Galwan incident until now. That while we prefer dialogue and diplomacy and have continued on gone, but at the same time we are prepared for the worst case scenario as well. So this is something. Secondly, India is the today fastest growing major economy. Now that is something whereas China's economic system is somewhat dwindling in a way or is going under stress due to various factors. Now that is one. Secondly, India today may be $3 trillion economy, but by 2047 it aims to be a $30 trillion economy and a developed country. Whereas China's aim remains to 2014 to become a superpower. Now, so at the end of the day, you see that India, the fifth largest power, China, the second largest economic power, are in some sort of a direct contestation as well. Now, that obviously remains there, and I believe always that we will continue to have this competition cooperation policy with China because nobody wants the war. But if the war is enforced upon you, you obviously have to respond to it. But in the meantime, this kind of geo-economic competition between India and China will continue. And of course, in that, you might have the Quad countries, you might have other IPEF forums or some other instrumental mechanisms that will be played out in Asia or in Indo-Pacific because the economic pivot of the world is moving towards Asia and is moved towards Asia already. So we are going to see that kind of competition.
Well, that absolutely what you're saying, I accept all of the things that you're saying particularly. But, the fact is that China does claim the South China Sea area, which is a major thoroughfare for all of the sea lanes of maritime traffic to be passing through and world's trade corridors. Now, if they claim that that is its exclusive kind of zone and they want to be hegemonic about it, what exactly India cannot really do very much on its own without being a part of all of these kinds of multilateral forums, because I think that is a much better way to impress upon not just China but any other country that is seeking to hegemonize its policies and other places. Wouldn't you say that the Quad is amongst the most effective mechanisms in the Indo-Pacific region at this point?
Well, yes, it is. But as I said that at the moment, I don't see India looking at it as an instrument of some kind of a coercion or a disciplinary kind of an instrument. It is rather looking at it more as an organization that can provide India the economic heft, because economy is also part of the integral part of the security mechanisms overall. So, of course, we have to work with like-minded countries, and that is why India is organizing or joining various plurilateral arrangements which can bring about the rule-based trade system. And we hope that China would realize its limitations and that these hegemonistic tendencies may be confronted by India or many other countries, including USA or others, in grouping format so that the global commons and the global goods continue to be supplied to the world where it belongs, because it's after all the seas and the oceans, we have our own cutout areas, economic zones or the other zones, but at the same time it is important that there are whatever the global goods are, they continue to be made available to all the littoral states.
Thank you very much indeed, Anil.
Thank you.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter @AIR News Alerts.
India's pharma industry has shown a tremendous growth of 90.32% from April to October 2022 as compared to the same period in 2013. India's pharma exports witnessed a growth of 137.7% from April to October 2013. Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia said that India has emerged as a global pharma powerhouse under the Narendra Modi government. Country's drugs and pharmaceuticals export value stands at 1,833.4 billion rupees for the year 2021-22. In the year 2013-14, its value was at 904.1 billion rupees.
Indian Navy and Royal Navy of Oman participated in the 13th edition of bilateral exercise Naseem al-Bahr or Sea Breeze. The highlight of the exercise was participation of India's guided missile stealth frigate INS Srikanth, offshore patrol vessel INS Sumitra and maritime patrol aircraft Dornier. Here is a report.
The 6-day-long exercise was conducted off the coast of Oman. 3 phases also included tactical maritime exercise involving surface action, air defense, maritime surveillance and interdiction. These operations helped in strengthening interoperability as well as enhancing understanding of each other's procedures. The 2 navies also had professional interactions between operations teams and friendly sports fixtures. Indian naval ships Srikanth and Sumitra and Omanian ships Al-Shinas and Al-Sib sailed for the sea phase. Naval exercises have added strength and substance to the bilateral ties of India and Oman. The 2 countries have traditionally enjoyed warm and friendly relations, sharing common cultural values. The first naval exercise between the 2 countries was conducted in 1993. This year marks 30 years of Indian and Omanese bilateral naval exercises. With Naseem Naqvi's report, this is Rupinder Kaur Chawla for World News.
India and the Gulf Cooperation Council GCC have decided to pursue resumption of Free Trade Agreement FTA negotiations. Both the sides have agreed to expedite conclusion of the requisite legal and technical requirements for formal resumption of the FTA negotiations. Speaking at the signing ceremony of the resumption of the India-GCC FTA negotiations, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said that the FTA will be a comprehensive economic partnership that will cover different aspects of trade. He expressed confidence that the 2 sides will set a new benchmark. Mr. Goyal said that the GCC is currently India's largest trading partner bloc with bilateral merchandise trade valued at over $154 billion in the financial year 2021-22.
In China, a massive labor protest has been reported at Foxconn's Zhangzhou factory against its zero-COVID policy. Laborers and workers at Foxconn's Zhangzhou factory held protests on the factory campus where they have had to stay since a closed-loop system was announced to counter the spread of COVID-19 without compromising productivity under the zero-COVID policy. Videos of the violence in Zhangzhou showed masked laborers facing off police in protective suits. The violence comes as shiny city Zhangzhou, which is home to a flagship iPhone factory, again tightened its COVID-19 measures, making it the only major economy still subscribed to full lockdowns to face virus outbreaks.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi remains the world's most popular leader with an approval rating of 77%. This was revealed in a global leader approval ratings released by a US-based consulting firm, Morning Consult. Mexico President Andrés Manuel López Obrador stands at the 2nd position, followed by the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. In the approval rating, US President Joe Biden is placed at the 9th position, followed by the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak among the 22 world leaders.
India has strengthened protection to lead soft-shell turtle under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species sites. India's proposal for transferring Leeds soft-shell turtle from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora has been adopted by the Conference of Parties to CITES in its 19th meeting at Panama. This will ensure that legal international trade in this species does not take place for commercial purposes. It will also ensure that international trade in captive breed specimens only takes place from registered facilities, and high penalties are provided for illegal trade of the species.
Moving on to sports now, and in cricket, New Zealand defeated India in the first one-day international at Auckland by 7 wickets on Friday. Chasing a target of 307 runs, New Zealand scored 309 for 3 in 47.1 overs. Tom Latham played an unbeaten knock of 145 runs of 104 balls and Kane Williamson slammed an unbeaten knock of 94 runs of 98 deliveries. Meanwhile, debutant Umran Malik took 2 wickets for the visitors. Initially, India posted 306 for 7 in 50 overs, with Shreyas Iyer smacking 80 runs of 76 balls. The second one-day international will be played on Sunday at Seddon Park in Hamilton.
In the FIFA World Cup Football 2022, host Qatar was eliminated from the tournament after losing to Senegal 1-3 in a Group A match. Buleria, Famara Didayu and Bamba Dieng scored 1 goal each and helped Senegal for an easy win. In another match, Iran defeated Wales by 2-0 in their Group B match. Rosba Cheshmi, Ramin Rezaian strike 1 goal each in last minute of the game and provide Iran a win in the thrilling encounter.
The second edition of 75 Creative Minds of Tomorrow at the International Film Festival of India, IFFI, in Goa concluded with the award ceremony of the 53-hour challenge. The competition provided a challenge to the 75 creative minds selected from all over the country to produce a short film on their idea of India at 100, all in 53 hours. The competition was launched on Monday by the Union Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur. During the 53-hour deadline, 5 short films were made. From the shoot to the final film delivery, the filmmakers worked non-stop to bring their scripts to life. The film Dear Diary, made by Team Purple, has been adjudged the best movie. The winning film highlights the issues of women's safety. The other 4 films made under the competition are Antardrishti, The Ring, Almost and Sauka Note. All the 5 films will be telecast across India on Shorts TV on Sunday at 9 p.m. The competition was organized by the National Film Development Corporation in collaboration with Shorts TV. And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post writes, with record COVID cases, China scrambles to plug an immunity gap.
The Financial Times reports EU demands rapid response to Joe Biden's $369 billion green subsidy package.
The Guardian writes that 49 people sentenced to death for mob killing in Algeria.
Japan Times reports that Keio University researchers seek approval for first uterus transplant in Japan.
South China Morning Post says that Hong Kong basketball Chiefs hope to host final 3v3 FIBA qualifying tournament for 2024 Olympics.
The Khabar Hub writes that chairman of the CPN-UML, KP Sharma Oli, warned that the pattern of the election result shows the country can lead towards instability.
The Balochistan Post reports that Iranian security forces have arrested 8 more Baloch citizens from various parts of western Balochistan within a week and allegedly transferred them to unknown locations. Before we end the bulletin, a quick look at the headlines once again. India to celebrate Constitution Day on Saturday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch various initiatives under the E-Court project. Indo-Pacific region is important for global economic growth, says Defence Minister of India Rajnath Singh. G20 delegation arrives in Port Blair for interactive briefing for heads of missions of member countries in India. In China, a massive labour protest reported at Foxconn's Changzhou factory against zero COVID policy. In cricket, New Zealand defeat India by 7 wickets in the first one-day international at Auckland. And in the FIFA World Cup football, host Qatar eliminated from the tournament after losing to Senegal 1-3 in a Group A match.
And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Bosnia and Herzegovina.
with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.